Hello everyone, this is the demo of Language Quest, a 2D narrative-driven adventure game designed to explore the power of language, cultural storytelling, and memory. So you can see here, this is how the game starts. It gives you a brief information about the story of the game and the setting and how it's going to be. You have the option to cut through this if you read a little bit quicker, or using spacebar or click, or you can just skip everything by just clicking return. For the purposes of the demo, I decided not to skip the intro so you could see how everything flows by itself. Here you can meet the main protagonist. This is who the player controls. So you can see right here we also have a pause menu set up that you can resume back to menu or quit the game. We also have an inventory system that shows you how many fragments you need to collect and how many retelling puzzles you have to complete. Currently, since you haven't collected anything, the page is blank. These are dialogue boxes. This is supposed to set the setting for the character, and the character is just speaking about the setting around her. As you can see right here, we're coming up on our first fragment. The indication of it is a torn piece of paper that's laying on the floor. Once we get close enough, the player is now prompted with this UI screen. It is showing that the new fragment is unlocked and what the fragment contains. There's also a switchback feature to translate the language from Spanish to English. The fragment is unlocked in Spanish and the whole game is supposed to be like you're learning this language. As you can see, the first dialogue box was prompted. This conversation is between the player and the spirit of the forest. Here's our first puzzle that's asking us what the following word is with a Spanish meaning. So for spirit, the correct word would be espíritu. And once you select the correct one, the player gets feedback based on their results. We just came up to the first retelling of the player's story. Here we have to put the options in the correct order based on what the fragments told us. As you can see on the top, we can also change the language from English to Spanish. Of course, you'll receive feedback if you don't have the correct order, but once you do, you get a prompt in that everything is correct. And as you can see, you have now completed one of the retelling puzzles. And this is how our next scene works. It has a nice fade to black and cuts into the next story. Every scene has its own dynamic music and its own dynamic story to it. Here's another puzzle that we have where we have to translate the word balance with its correct one. If you get it incorrect, you're of course given feedback, but if you get it correct, you're given feedback as well. Once again, this is another fragment. You can always change it to Spanish or English, and once that's added to the journal, it's now in your inventory. Here you have another dialogue scene with a character and you're having a conversation. Once again, you have 3 different options to select from. Here you're coming up to the second retelling of the story. It works the same way as the first one, you just have to drag everything into the correct order. And as you can see, now we're at 2 out of 5 retelling puzzles and 4 out of 10 fragments. Now we're on the third scene of the game. Once again, the music has now changed and the story has changed too. Here the character is reacting to its environment and what it sees around it. Here we have now came up to the third fragment with its 2 unique elements. Here we have approached another element, and once again it's added to our inventory. Once again, you have to retell the story based on the fragments. Here's a conversation that the player is having with itself. It's supposed to be questioning itself and whether it remembers things from the forest, or specifically words. Here's another puzzle where you have to translate the word language. As you can see, if you get it incorrect, you get feedback. And now to the next and final scene of the game. Once again, the player is prompted with its own dialogue, reacting to its setting, and the music has now once again changed. We have now came across the last and final fragment. Now, this is time we have all the fragments together so we can retell the final story. Here we have another puzzle that's asking us to translate the word echo into its correct one. Now you have reached the final setting of the game. The player now has to fully retell the story in order to beat the game. Once again, the player is talking to itself and reacting to the environment around it and what we must do. Now we have to retell the story based on the correct order based on the fragments we have collected. Once the final retelling is complete, the world tree springs to life and the environment around it also springs back to life. You have now remembered the forgotten memories of the forest, and the forest is alive. After that, it switches to the end credit scene where it goes a little bit more in detail with the story and what happened, and that's the final basis of the game. Once again, for the purposes, I didn't cut through it so you could see how the story flows. As you can see, we also have a credit page with all the details on who worked on this project. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed.